podcast in which one man strives to level up his geekhood and helping you do the same, one battle at a time. Now, let's get geeky with Gamer Leaf.
I know this will air after the fact, but happy Veterans Day to you, Larry.
Thank you. Thank you. Veterans Day is an important day.
Yes, sir, for sure. I'm as well a veteran. I was in for like 4 years. Did a little time in Afghanistan myself.
Thank you for your service, sir. I don't know what to say to a veteran of that war. Interesting times we're living in, and my heart goes out to you. I've been down at the Army War College, and I'm meeting these young guys down there, and, people don't even know the war's going on back here. I don't mean that in a bad way, because so many of us do know, but so few of us are doing so much. It's amazing. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for your service as well. We appreciate it. So that's awesome, Larry. So going back to the game, this looks really cool and whatnot. Was there a reason you selected World War II to do this one?
Yeah, I'm fascinated by World War II. World War II. That's my personal interest, and it's got everything. For a war that happened 70 years ago, we haven't come too far away from it. We still have our fighters, we still have our bombers, we still have our artillery. We're not flying around in super weapons. There's a big gap between World War I and World War II, but there's such a small gap that actually exists. I mean, technology, of course, has picked up and helped, and things are changing. But the gap between World War II and today is smaller than the gap between World War I and World War II.
My 14-year-old son, he really likes World War II. He likes to study and look at different things online about it and whatnot.
That's wonderful. I encourage him to do that. I encourage all young people to do that. I think our modern history started at the end of World War II or during the war. I think that's when America became the superpower it has been for the last 70-some years. And I think the events that occurred in World War II, the way the map was drawn at the end of it and everything, has had an impact on our lives today.
For sure, definitely. Now, when going back to War Room, when we were playing and whatnot, are the territories that you, or the countries that you are, do you select those and you select the allies that you're going to be, or is that all played out, or does it go along with World War II, or do you pick who your allies are going to be?
You don't pick who your allies are going to be. You pick what alliance you're going to be, and then you pick a member of that alliance. For example, you can play the United States, you could play Soviet Union, you can play Great Britain or the Commonwealth, or you can. China is relatively small, although it could be played by a single player. China may also be chosen. And that's your alliance. And then the Axis, the historic Axis, the Germans, the Japanese, and the Italians, they're, depending on what alliance you're in, they're the bad guys or the good guys. And so what's fascinating, what will make this game much more enjoyable to you as a player is if you have a knowledge of World War II history, because you'll see it repeating itself often here, but you as the player, you'll be changing some of the outcomes and changing some of the directions of the grand strategy.
There's a lot of choices to make in the game. I know you said it's not complicated, but is there a lot of choices? Because I suffer from analysis paralysis. Will more people hate me if I go ahead and try to play this?
No, they'll hate you.
Oh boy.
Everyone is, and this is what's another great feature of War Room, is that everything is simultaneous. So when you're in your analysis paralysis, there's probably 3 or 4 other people also in their analysis paralysis. So you're all sharing an experience and going through the same thing. as the game unfolds, there becomes less or fewer and fewer things to analyze, so it moves along quicker. But yeah, again, if you have a notion of history, you know what you have to do. You have to capture these islands in the Pacific so that you can get within bombing range and start knocking out the Japanese manufacturing ability. And then you have to support your Chinese allies. And you have to make sure that Australia doesn't fall because the Japanese push in that direction. You have to have the American Navy there to do it. And that's just repeating history. In Europe, you've got to get help to the Russians, or the Germans are going to move into Moscow. And World War II, they were just 20 miles from it, and they made some decisions that didn't play out for them, and they always thought that they could go back. But then the Americans became involved, and, we had our Normandy invasion, and suddenly Germany found itself right in the middle of two fronts, the last place it wanted to be. The Italians trying to make Notre Maris there. I forget the expression exactly, but they're trying to conquer or set up the new Roman Empire along the Mediterranean basin. And all of this is driven by resources, and they are represented exactly where they should be in the Middle East. Whoever controls that part of the world gets a big advantage. If they lose their own domestic oil because of enemy expansions, conquest, then they suffer because of oil, the lack of oil, and they can't fuel their armies, or they can't build things, and that's what happened to Germany. That's what extremely happened to Japan. You attack Japanese convoys bringing back resources from Central Asia or down in Indonesia, Sumatra, and so on. You stop that flow, and Japan starts to wrinkle up and dry out, and that's what we did in World War II.
There's another aspect to that, and which is the game accelerates. I don't know if you've brought this up, but the first turn is by the longest, the first round, and by the second turn, it could be 50 to 60% faster than the first round, and that's sort of, there's a accelerating curve to how long the game takes. So it kind of gets faster and faster towards the climax of the game, simply due to the number of battles and fewer units present on the map. And so then each move becomes more and more critical as the game, each round progresses.
Okay, cool. And just looking at some of the components on there and whatnot, what can you guys tell me about the plastic stackable interlocking units? Those look kind of cool.
I think Tom should talk to you about that.
Yeah, so I'm holding them in my hand right now, the prototype. So we have a couple handmade prototypes, and we used bits from other games for those. But I have a 3D printer, and we designed these interlocking units so you can pick them up from the top and not have the pieces scatter everywhere. And when you're transferring the units to the battle board, you don't have to delicately, gingerly pick up the stack. You can just grab the whole stack from the top, and it holds together. But they're designed so that they don't snap together flush, so there's still a little groove in between, so you can pull them apart. So you don't have to get a wrench to break them apart. They're pretty easy to put together and take apart again.
So it's not like when my kids come to me with a stack of Legos and I have to maybe take it apart with my teeth.
Yeah, you shouldn't have to do that. There's gaps, little gaps in between each piece, so it's much easier to take apart.
What these stacks are the components that make up a command. Let's say an Army Corps or an army itself has, because there are many armies, particularly on the Eastern Front. What's on top of these stacks, you have what we call a command token, and that'll have a designation. That'll be the name of the unit, and that unit can change in size depending on the makeup of the unit, and the makeup of the unit is based on the units under that command token. So that altogether they are a stack, but that stack is a command. So when you move the command, or you give an order to a command to move, you write down the number, the name, not just the number. Let's, for the sake of this conversation, call it the 43rd. And when you write an order, you would write 43rd, and then you write the code address located on the map. You write all this on your OMP, or operations and production chart, and you do that secretly. So you would say 43rd to B19. And so wherever the 43rd is, it has now been instructed to move to B19. As it's before it can actually be moved, your opponents have to verify that the order is correct and that the movement limitations have been observed and followed. And if it passes that rigor, it can be moved. And that's one of the core elements of this game. Is the units, the commands have a name. They are on a location. They're given orders to move to a different location, and then once they're there, and the enemy also may have moved into that area, or were already there, there's a conflict to resolve. There's a battle. And so the command can take casualties. So it goes in with, let's say, eight subordinate commands in that one single upper command, but it might come out with far fewer.
Yeah, well, that's really cool, and I really like the that whole morale thing that you talked about, where the actual country can die and fall depending on how many casualties and whatnot. That's a really great mechanic.
That is a great mechanic. It reflects real world problems and situations. It's not just about heroics and production. It's also about stress and morale, and it's interesting and interesting to the point where it's fun to observe this and deal with it.
And we don't suffer from the problem of risk, let's say, where a game can drag on forever and ever. It helps bring the game to a conclusion.
Oh yeah, that's great. Because yeah, with my son, my 14-year-old son, when we play Risk, it can take forever. Like he likes to go, he goes straight for Asia or whatnot, and I'm trying to like hold South America or Australia or whatnot, and he just takes over the world. But it takes quite a while.
Yeah, and there's still a chance to turn around. So if you make a mistake on the first round, mistakes in the first round aren't as bad as mistakes on the fourth round. That's when your every move is critical by the time it's the fourth round. But on the first round, your ally might come and save the day, or you might make a brilliant move later on to climb back up that ladder. But it's just as you move on, each move becomes more and more critical because there's so fewer units on the board. The production is not strong enough to replace what you start with. So the board starts at the peak of the war and conflict, and then it gradually reduces till each unit becomes critical.
Yeah, your attrition rate matters. You in most cases, unless you're really doing well, you cannot replace your casualties, and that represents a certain decline. And the stress you were talking about, Blake, or asking about, that
Yeah.
that has a direct impact on your military ability, because that eats up morale. It breaks down your rail communication systems. It affects how many units you can move in a round, and it directly impacts your income. But when I say income, I mean resources available to you.
Cool beans. Yeah, that's awesome. And then it looks like you have some custom 12-sided dice. Is that correct?
12-sided, color-coded, weighed. Like there's more yellows than blues, and more blues than greens, and more greens than, and the list goes on. And consequently, if you assign these dice, or the color on these dice, to the different units, like infantry would be yellow, which would make it more subject. there's a greater potential to roll yellow than any other color, and that would mean that it would be your infantry who takes the hit. The cost of this infantry is less than, say, your artillery, and so it's a fine balance. You have to purchase the best combination of units you can with the resources you have.
So how would if per se me and you were playing it and we were when it comes to battle, how does that play out?
Right. We move to the battle status board. We lift the pieces in a contested territory. We lift them up and put them on this battle tracking board. As we place them, we can take a defensive stance or an offensive stance. We break battles into two areas. One is the air battle, the survivors of that air battle going on above us for air dominance. Then goes down to the surface, and that surface could be either a sea battle or a land battle. And so the surviving aircraft from the air battle join in that, participate in that, all the while they're subject to being shot down. And we roll dice, and we can roll up to 30 dice for one round. And casualties are moved, or some units are just damaged, and then you have to pay to have them repaired. So that sucks up resources. And if you win, you take control of the territory. And when you have control of a territory, you possess, or you are given, the territory card. Now, I want you to think of the territory card as maybe the deed card in Monopoly. It shows that you own it. On those cards, these amazing cards, your setup, your income is clearly shown to you because of this card rack that we align the cards in. You can just go right up the red column and count how much oil you're making, right up the blue for your iron, and right up the yellow for your OSRs or other strategic resources, and that represents things like tin and rubber and other strategic resources that we need. That a military machine needs.
Okay, yeah, that's pretty cool. Looking at the Kickstarter, I can kind of make that out. Like they got black and white and red and blue and yellow. Is that what you're talking about, or is that the?
Those colors match a certain. They come up. There's a certain number of them on each die, and the more there are, the more chance it'll have. So there you go. It's called weighed dice, and so you can pretty much predict what casualties, what types of units will be more subject to be hit than others. You take that into consideration.
On the territory cards, the black background is the ID of the territory, and the number with the white background is its strategic value, or basically how many victory points that particular territory is worth. And then the other colors, red, blue, and yellow, are the resources.
Okay, I see the territory cards. Okay, I see them. Awesome. And what about the pegs? It looks like there's something you put pegs in, kind of like on Battleship.
Yeah, we used to have not cribbage pegs, but people kept knocking the pieces all over the place. So we designed this pegboard so you can pick it up and tip it over and the pegs won't fall out. So that just keeps track of how many resources you have at any given moment. You just track it up during the income step, and then you track it back down when you have to make a payment, either for repairs or even bidding oil for turn order, which is an interesting mechanic because while all the moves are simultaneous, this turn order is still important in pinning situations during the movement phase. And in some cases that can be critical. So you'll be adjusting how many resources you have during production as well when you're buying new units. And any penalties you may receive, you'll have to track them up or down. So it was just a cleaner and simpler way. It's a little more expensive to use pegboards, but this game's designed to be deluxe and top of the line, a grand game. So we want the best components possible.
It looks like it. Yeah, it looks really grand on there. And so going back to that, like changing different things, and it sounds like you guys have play tested the heck out of this with the 4 years or whatnot. During play testing, was there ever anything besides the pegs and whatnot, the change of that? Was there ever anything that you guys had to scrap because it just wouldn't work?
Numerous.
Yeah, I could touch. I can talk to that. It's like we in this last 4 years, which is a considerable amount of time, and we're not talking about we picked it up and put it down periodically. We worked on it every day for 4 years. What happened? It's like we designed 12 games, and each iteration went forward with the best of the last game, and we threw out whole systems. We made changes to the map. We discovered issues, and we redesigned to accommodate these issues. It just went on and on and on, and neither one of us. As a team member here, I'm very proud to have been a member of this team. And the team members were never we were infatigable. We just kept each other going, and it wasn't always fun, and it was often tedious, but it was nonetheless always in the background a labor of love.
So why Kickstarter?
Kickstarter, it's just the two of us, and it's an independent venture. So Kickstarter is essential for a lot of games these days, and it seems a quite viable means to present the game to the audience and get the funds we need to manufacture the game. Otherwise, it wouldn't be possible, or we'd have to make compromises. If a lot of times publishers want to cut costs or have it done in a certain way, or distribute it in a certain way, and now we have the flexibility to sell it where we want and how we want, and also make it the best that it can be. We're patient, and we waited until it's ready to go live. So Kickstarter is a great platform to do that.
Cool. Yeah, it looks like a pretty grand project. So per se, I always often kid about this on my podcast or whatnot, but per se, somebody's fallen asleep at the wheel or whatnot during listening to this or whatnot, or their passenger, they've fallen asleep. It wouldn't be because you guys or your game. It'd probably be because they're sick of listening to me on the podcast because I release so many. The other week I released like six episodes during the week or whatnot, and so they're a little bit sick and tired of that. So they just barely woke up so they don't hit the oncoming traffic, but now they're listening, they're wide-eyed and everything. Why should they take a chance on War Room, a Larry Harris game on Kickstarter, especially with all the other great games that are currently running on Kickstarter?
Yeah. I'll tell you why. Because I like this game, and so will they. And isn't that what it's about? It's about, hey, that was fun. This is cool. I'm proud to show this and share this with my friends. And this is meaningful and it's fun.
There you go. You have Larry Harris's backing on why you should back it. You heard it here first. Well, maybe not first. Have you guys been on any other podcasts?
I'm not sure. This is very possibly the first one.
Okay, well, there you go. Maybe I can be at liberty to say that then. You heard it, because depending on when we release this or not, but you heard it here first on Getting Geeky with Game Relief, hopefully, and why you should take a chance on it. And we really are glad that we were able to get Larry and Tom to come on with us. Now, going on to the next portion of the podcast, it's called Adventures in Application Acquisition. So AAA, but it's not AAA as somebody who will pick you up on the side of the road. It's about applications. Now, is there either of you are there any applications that you, whether it be on the cell phone, on the tablet, on computer, or on video games, that you guys use a lot of? It doesn't have to be necessarily related to war gaming or anything like that. We've had somebody who did a traveling app, somebody who did a app where you can take a picture of anything and it'll tell you whether or not it's a hot dog. Is there any applications that you guys use?
You mean the development apps to make the game, like Photoshop or 3D?
Just anything. If it could be for development, it can be for something completely different. We have a guy that came on and talked about his game first, and then he talked about an app that he uses to track his miles for his taxes.
Oh, okay. Well, I can talk about the software I use. I've used been using 3D Studio Max for 20 years. So
Okay, we can talk about it. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
it's a 3D modeling software program, and that's how, for example, I put together a lot of the renders for the video for the Kickstarter. And the Photoshop is a pretty fundamental tool for doing anything and everything. I used Adobe After Effects to edit and assemble the montage for the video. I've used tons of different programs over the years for computer gaming, but Adobe products are pretty essential for that. We're using something called Sarif to lay out the rules for the game.
Okay, so what can you tell us about Sarif?
Well, it's nice that there's an Adobe product as well, but it's really expensive. Sarif is pretty nice and simple to use to insert images and adjust the fonts and make text boxes. It's much better than Word, so I recommend it. I don't remember how much it cost, but it was pretty cheap.
Okay, if there's one thing you could do, like for per se, Tom, you own the rights to that application, Serif. What would be one thing you would do to make it better?
Oh, um, that's a good question. It right now it's doing everything I need it to. I guess if it could write all the proofread it all for me, I don't know. It's ideal. So I can't think of anything.
Well, there you go. You got Tom's seal of approval. Nothing you can do to improve it. So that sounds like a pretty good app, Serif. That's great. So yeah, we don't want to keep you all night. But mind us coming there to your hometown to stalk you. How would people go about finding you guys?
Well, we both live in Massachusetts. I live in Greenfield in Western Mass, which is a small town with farms and rivers. And then Larry lives over towards Boston, in the north of Boston, in a suburb. Boston kind of spreads out all over the place, but he's about a half hour from the coast of the Cape. Um, if you can get through the traffic, it, which is pretty awful. So we're about 2 hours apart, but we Skype all the time to coordinate, and then every now and then we meet up for a playtest.
Well, there you go. How would the fans get a hold of you guys? Is it best to come to Boston to track you down, or how would they find you?
Well, we've met in various cafes. We're friends with the local game store, so if you visit Greenfield Games in Greenfield, you might spot us there. And there's a great cafe where we did some demos over towards Larry's home called The Castle, and we did some game demos there, so you might see us there too.
Cool. Can they find you guys online anywhere?
Sure. You can go to nightingale-games.com, and we've got a website showcasing the game, or you can email at War Room Bulletin, and you can we have a news bulletin that we send out with updates. You can sign up on our webpage, or if you just Google War Room and Larry Harris, you might find our Facebook group, which you can sign up and see a bunch of photos of all these past playtests we've talked about. We've gone to a few conventions up in Toronto with Cliffside Bunker, hosted a con that we demoed the game at. We went to the World Board Gaming Championship in Pennsylvania, and you can see all those photos. Larry was talking about going to the War College in Pennsylvania. You can see how that went down. So yeah, that's how you can contact us on Facebook, on our website, or if you can stalk us in person if you want, if you come to our towns.
Oh boy, there you go. Tom gave you guys an open invitation to stalk him if you're willing to go to Boston and whatnot. Cool beans. So they have till the 8th of December to back this game on Kickstarter. Is that correct?
That's correct. 11:59 p.m. on December 8th. It's running a little bit longer because we thought there'd be a slow period during Thanksgiving, so we gave it an extra week or so.
And it looks like it funded in the first 24 hours. Am I not mistaken?
That is true. We had an amazing. We had a 1,200 people signed up for the mailing list. So doing the pre-Kickstarter campaign paid off for us when we sent that newsletter out, and everybody knew about it, and so that's why we got such a first day boost.
There you go. Cool. So, per se, somebody backs this on Kickstarter or whatnot. I know you don't want to overpromise and underdeliver, but when would they anticipate getting War Room so they can begin forming their axes or forming their allies and taking their friends to war?
Well, we have an estimated ship date of December 2018, and we posted that with plenty of buffer because we've heard all the horror stories about the traffic jams of stuff getting out at Christmas time from China, and there's apparently a huge risk of your shipment not going out. But we gave ourselves about 6 months of buffer time, so I'm hoping that we'll be one of the rare Kickstarters that delivers on time or even early.
So yeah, we really wanted to thank you all for coming on Getting Geeky with Game Relief to talk about War Room with us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Gamer Leaf levels up. Tune in next week to see if Gamer Leaf's luck holds up.